The morning Daniel Carter walked out on his wife and their critically ill daughter, he had no idea that life had just handed Sarah the biggest victory of her career. At 6:47 a.m., while he was too busy texting his mistress, an email arrived confirming that Sarah Carter's tiny, hard-fought engineering firm had just landed a $50 billion federal infrastructure contract, the largest in the nation's history. But Daniel never saw it. He was too busy packing his designer suitcases, the ones she'd helped him buy, into the car, ready to trade his struggling family for a glittering promise. Sarah stood in the kitchen, the soft hum of the refrigerator filling the silence, Emma's hospital bills in one hand and divorce papers in the other. 15 years of sacrifice, building a business from a garage while Daniel climbed corporate ladders using her contacts. And now, she was watching him leave without a second glance. That same afternoon, he signed away his marriage and his rights to their daughter, their 7-year-old, still fighting leukemia, just to marry Victoria Chen, the rich heiress who could give him the status and comfort he thought he deserved. But what Daniel didn't know, what he couldn't possibly see through the haze of his own ambition, was that the woman he called a failure was about to become one of the most powerful women in America. In a hospital room filled with the quiet hiss of oxygen and the steady beeping of machines, Sarah's hands trembled as she signed yet another consent form. Emma lay beside her, pale and fragile, her small body waging a war no child should ever have to fight. 18 months had passed since the diagnosis, the same week Sarah's company was shortlisted for that government project, and she'd been living in two worlds ever since, half in hospital corridors, half in conference calls, chasing deadlines in waiting rooms, whispering reassurances to her daughter between phone meetings with federal officials. Daniel had been there at first, or at least she thought he was. But little by little, his visits grew shorter, his excuses longer. The stress of hospital bills, the late nights, the shrinking bank account, it all chipped away at whatever love was left. He said they had to downsize, that her business was draining their savings. She agreed, not realizing he was already preparing his exit, already building a future with Victoria Chen, daughter of Marcus Chen, the CEO of Chen Industries. Sarah remembered meeting Victoria once, at a networking gala, the way Daniel's gaze had lingered a little too long on her diamonds, the way Sarah had laughed it off, chalking it up to exhaustion. Now, in the pre-dawn quiet, Sarah stirred a cup of instant coffee, staring at her laptop without seeing the glowing government notification. She was too tired to connect the dots. Emma had been up all night in pain, and Sarah had spent those dark hours holding her, humming lullabies, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. Daniel's last text had come at 2 a.m., working late. Don't wait up. She didn't anymore. She'd stopped waiting weeks ago, stopped expecting him to ask about Emma's treatment or the proposal she poured 15 years of her life into. Across the street, a billboard for luxury condos flickered in the early light, a life that felt like someone else's dream now. She remembered when Daniel used to brag about her, back when he said his wife was going to change the world. But that pride had soured into resentment. As Emma's illness drained their savings and her business demanded more time, Daniel's patience ran dry. He began to question her choices, to sneer at her efforts, to say maybe she should just get a real job. When he finally came home that night, the air in their small apartment turned heavy, sharp with frustration and something colder underneath. He slammed his briefcase down, loosened his tie like it had personally wronged him, and barely glanced at Emma's medication schedule taped to the fridge. Sarah stood at the counter, chopping vegetables for a simple dinner, something affordable, something that stretched too far for what little they had left. He looked around, at the second-hand furniture, the stack of medical bills, the tired woman who still loved him, and said, almost spitting the words, "This is what we become, Sarah. This struggle, this poverty, I can't do this anymore." Her knife rose mid-cut. "Daniel," she said quietly, "the proposal results are coming any day now, if we get this contract." But he didn't let her finish. His fist came down hard on the table, rattling the cheap plates, the sound echoing through the room like a door slamming shut on everything they'd built together. "That's all I've heard for years," Daniel snapped, his voice cutting through the kitchen like glass. "If the contract comes through, if Emma gets better, if we can just hold on a little longer. I'm tired, Sarah, tired of holding on to nothing." Sarah turned slowly, knife still in her hand, and looked at him, really looked at him. The man standing there wasn't her husband anymore. His suit was sharp, his eyes distant, his tone cold. "Emma needs us," she said softly, the words trembling on her tongue. "She needs both of us. The doctor said the treatment's working. Emma needs a father who isn't drowning," he interrupted, though he couldn't even meet her eyes. Her heart sank. "What are you talking about?" He exhaled sharply, like he'd rehearsed this moment. "I've been offered a position. A real one. Vice President of Development at Chen Industries. Marcus Chen himself wants me on his team." The name hit her like a chill. "The Chen family?" she asked quietly. "Victoria Chen's father." His jaw tightened. "Yes, Victoria recommended me. She sees my potential, unlike some people who only see a paycheck to fund their failing dreams." The cruelty in his words stung like a slap. Sarah had been the one who had helped him climb the corporate ladder, using her industry connections, sacrificing her own opportunities so he could thrive. And now here he was, standing in the kitchen she paid for, in the apartment she never wanted, calling her dreams failures while secretly building a new life with another woman. "What are you saying, Daniel?" she whispered, though part of her already knew. He didn't hesitate. "I'm saying I want out. I want a divorce. The Chens think I'm single, focused, ambitious. Marcus is already talking about making me his son-in-law, giving me real power. Staying married to you would ruin everything." Her vision blurred. She gripped the counter to keep herself steady. "Emma is your daughter," she said, her voice breaking. "She's fighting for her life, and you're leaving her? For a job?" "I'll pay child support," he replied flatly, almost rehearsed. "But I can't stay tied to this life anymore. Victoria and her family can give me everything I've worked for. Don't make this harder than it has to be." That night, after he packed his essentials and left, the apartment fell silent, the kind of silence that hums in your bones. Sarah sat by the window in Emma's hospital room, watching her daughter sleep beneath a maze of tubes and monitors. The rhythmic beep of the machines filled the air, steady and fragile. She'd spent so long trying to make Daniel happy, working harder, giving more, believing that love could outlast disappointment. But now, staring at a little girl's fragile chest rise and fall, Sarah knew the truth. The only thing that mattered, the only thing, was Emma, and the contract. The next morning, with trembling hands, Sarah finally opened the government email that had been waiting since the moment Daniel walked out. Her breath caught as she read the words once, then again, just to make sure. Carter Engineering Solutions had been awarded the National Infrastructure Modernization Project, a $50 billion deal spanning 10 years. The largest federal contract in U.S. history. She'd done it. After 15 years of rejection, sleepless nights, and proving herself in boardrooms full of men who doubted her, she'd finally won. She should have been overjoyed. She should have called Daniel immediately, screamed, laughed, cried, celebrated the impossible. But she didn't, because that same morning, a courier arrived at her door with divorce papers. Efficient, cold, final. Daniel wanted nothing. No alimony, no assets, no custody. He'd even surrendered his parental rights to Emma, claiming the financial and emotional burden was too much. It was all written out neatly, as if erasing his family was just another business transaction. Sarah sat in the hospital cafeteria, the contract open on a tablet, the divorce papers beside her, 2 versions of her life side by side. Upstairs, her daughter was fighting to live. And here, she was holding the keys to an empire. She thought about calling Daniel, about telling him what he'd just thrown away. But something in her stopped cold. Maybe pride, maybe clarity, or maybe just a realization that a man who could abandon his sick child for status didn't deserve to know about her victory. Instead, Sarah called her attorney, then her accountant, then every loyal employee who'd stayed with her when things were at their worst. Within hours, the news broke. Carter Engineering Solutions had won the impossible bid. Sarah Carter was hailed as a visionary, the woman who defied every obstacle to lead the nation's most ambitious infrastructure project. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, partners, governors, senators. Everyone wanted her. Everyone except Daniel. Through mutual contacts, she learned he was already engaged, the announcement made at an exclusive party that very night. He proposed to Victoria Chen with a ring worth more than Emma's monthly treatment. The wedding was set for 6 weeks later, a lavish affair at the Chen estate. While Sarah held her daughter's hand in a hospital room, Daniel was toasting champagne under crystal chandeliers. He thought he'd traded up. He had no idea what, or who, he'd really left behind. Marcus Chen had kept his word. Within weeks, Daniel was wearing tailored suits and a new title, Vice President of Development at Chen Industries. Everything he'd ever wanted handed to him on a silver platter. Meanwhile, Sarah threw herself into work with a kind of relentless focus that only heartbreak can create. Her days blurred between conference calls with federal officials and hospital visits, scheduling Emma's chemo sessions around meetings with senators and city planners. The signing bonus from the contract went straight to Emma's care. Better doctors, private specialists, the best treatment money could buy. She moved them into a brighter apartment closer to the hospital, one with real bedrooms, soft sunlight spilling across the floor, and windows that opened to something like hope. Slowly, miraculously, Emma began to improve. The doctors were cautious, but optimistic. Her color returned. Her smile came back. For the first time in years, Sarah felt like maybe they were both finally breathing again. And then, 3 weeks after divorce was finalized, it arrived. A wedding invitation. Heavy ivory cardstock, embossing gold. Victoria Chen and Daniel Carter request the honor of your presence. Sarah stared at it for hours, this cold, elegant symbol of betrayal made real. When her best friend Jennifer found her that night, Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table, tears streaking down her face, the invitation crushed in her hand. "Don't go," Jennifer said firmly, grabbing the card and tossing it into the trash. "He doesn't deserve to see you. He doesn't deserve anything from you." But Sarah just shook her head, her voice steady in a way that scared even her. "I have to. I need to see him marry her. I need to see what he chose over Emma and me. Maybe then, I can finally let go." The morning of the wedding, Jennifer showed up with a navy blue dress, elegant, understated, powerful. "If you're going to do this," she said, "you're going to look like the woman he'll regret losing for the rest of his life." Sarah smiled faintly. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't see the broken woman Daniel left behind. She saw strength, poise, a survivor who had built an empire from the ashes of her old life. The Chen estate was everything Daniel had always wanted. Sprawling gardens, marble staircases, chandeliers that dripped light like champagne. The kind of place built not just on money, but legacy. As Sarah walked through the grand hall, she could feel the stays, the whispers. Who was she? Why was she here? Didn't she know this was Victoria Chen's day? And then recognition rippled through the crowd. Sarah Carter, the woman all the business headlines were talking about. The engineer who won the $50 billion federal contract. What was she doing at Daniel Carter's wedding? She stood quietly at the back of the ceremony hall, Jennifer's hand gripping hers. At the altar, Daniel looked every bit the success story. Custom tuxedo, polished smile, the perfect corporate prince. When Victoria appeared in her $50,000 gown, his face lit up with that same hungry ambition Sarah once mistook for love. She couldn't bear to listen to their vows. Words that used to mean everything, now hollow echoes of promises he'd already broken. At the reception, the whispers grew louder. Daniel finally saw her. His face drained of color. But Victoria, glowing with happiness, didn't notice. Sarah took a glass of champagne from a waiter, her posture calm, her heart quietly breaking beneath the surface. She wasn't there for revenge. She was there for closure. To prove to herself that she could stand in the wreckage of what once was, and still walk away whole. Then Daniel's mother appeared, her eyes sharp as glass. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed. "Haven't you humiliated yourself enough? My son has moved on to better things. Don't cause a scene." Sarah met her gaze without flinching. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said softly. "I just came to wish him well. I'll be leaving soon." But before she could, Marcus Chen stepped up to the microphone. The chatter dimmed instantly. His voice carried across the hall, smooth, commanding, practiced. He began with a speech about family values, about honesty, about integrity in business and marriage. But there was something in his tone, a weight that made every word feel like a prelude to something bigger. Then his expression hardened. "Before we celebrate this union," he said, "I need to address something that's come to my attention." The air in the room shifted, tense, uncertain. "I built my company on truth," Marcus continued, "and I expect the same from those who wish to be part of my family. 2 days ago, I received an anonymous report about Daniel Carter's past. I hoped it wasn't true. I even hired investigators to disprove it, but what they found was deeply troubling." The crowd went still. Victoria turned toward her father, confusion written across her face. Daniel paled, his confidence evaporating. Marcus's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Daniel Carter presented himself to us as an unmarried, ambitious professional. But he failed to mention that he was married for 12 years, that he has a 7-year-old daughter battling leukemia, that he divorced his wife and abandoned his sick child only weeks ago to pursue this relationship." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Heads turned. Eyes found Sarah, still standing at the back, frozen, every secret now dragged into the light. Daniel tried to protest, shaking his head, but Marcus wasn't finished. "For those who may not know," he added, his voice steady but cold, "his ex-wife is here tonight. Sarah Carter, founder of Carter Engineering Solutions, the woman who just won the largest infrastructure contract in U.S. history, the same day Daniel filed for divorce." The room fell into a stunned, heavy silence. And for the first time, it wasn't Sarah who looked broken. It was Daniel, the same woman who had lifted him when no one else believed in him, who used her own connections to open doors for his career, who worked nights building her company while carrying the weight of their daughter's illness alone. And now, the truth was unfolding in front of everyone. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth, her perfect wedding day cracking before her eyes. Across the room, her gaze met Sarah's, two women bound by the same man's lies. Daniel tried to speak, stammering excuses, but Marcus raised a hand and his voice cut through the silence like glass. "I built my company on honesty," he said, his tone sharp, unwavering. "And I will not welcome a man into my family who hides behind deception, who abandons his wife and sick child to chase wealth. The position is rescinded. This marriage is canceled." The room exploded. Gasps, whispers, chaos. Victoria's mother rushed to her side as she broke down in tears. Guests looked anywhere but at Daniel, the man who had just lost everything in one breath. He stood frozen at the altar, his new world collapsing, humiliation flooding his face. Sarah didn't move. There was no triumph in her eyes, no satisfaction in seeing him undone. Only quiet strength, the kind that comes from surviving too much to need revenge. Jennifer's hand found Hayes just as Victoria stumbled toward them, mascara streaking her cheeks. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, voice trembling. "He told me you were bitter, that you'd trapped him. I believed him. I'm so sorry about your daughter. How could he walk away from her?" Sarah's reply was calm, almost gentle. "Money can't fix a dishonest heart," she said. "I hope you find someone who deserves you." Then Marcus approached, the powerful man who'd just destroyed his own event for the sake of truth. His voice softened. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "I owe you an apology. My family played a role in your pain. Your strength, your grace tonight. It's extraordinary. If there's anything I can do," Sarah shook her head, "there's nothing needed. I came for closure. I found it. I'm going home to my daughter." The crowd parted as she walked out. The same crowd that had whispered about her minutes earlier now watched in quiet awe. Jennifer walked beside her, and to everyone's surprise, Victoria followed them to the doors. "Can I visit?" she asked softly. "Can I help somehow? With your daughter, or your work?" Sarah studied her. The young woman stripped of pretense, all sincerity now. "When the dust settles," she said, "come to the hospital. Emma loves visitors who bring books." 3 weeks later, Victoria kept that promise. She arrived at the children's hospital without makeup, arms full of storybooks, humility replacing glamour. She sat with Sarah while Emma slept, and between them, something fragile began to grow. Not friendship, not yet, but understanding. Victoria had been deceived too. She believed Daniel's lies because she wanted to believe in the love story he'd sold her. Now, she was trying to make amends, not with words, but with actions. Marcus soon followed her lead, reaching out to Sarah with a proposal. His company specialized in manufacturing, Hayes in engineering and design. Together, he said, they could reshape the nation's infrastructure. Sarah listened quietly, the irony not lost on her. Daniel had chased his family for their power, but it was her integrity that had earned their respect. "I'll consider it," she said finally, "but not as charity. If we work together, it's because our companies belong side by side, not one above the other." Marcus smiled, a glint of admiration in his eyes. "That's exactly why I want the partnership." Over the next months, that partnership blossomed, built on merit, not manipulation. And in time, Victoria became part of Sarah's world, visiting Emma often, raising awareness of pediatric cancer, and proving, day by day, that she was determined to be better. As for Daniel, he was left outside it all. His messages turned bitter, his blame predictable, but Sarah never replied. She'd already learned the most powerful lesson of all. Sometimes silence is the only answer left to give. When Sarah didn't respond to his messages, Daniel's tone began to crumble. The arrogance disappeared first, then the anger, until all that was left were desperate, pleading words from a man who'd finally run out of places to hide. He showed up at her new office once, but security turned him away before he even made it past the lobby. Then, 6 months after the wedding that never was, came a final message: "Meet me at Riverside Park." The same place where he'd once slipped a ring onto her finger and promised her forever. Sarah almost didn't go. Life had moved forward, beautifully, powerfully. Emma was in remission now, her laughter echoing through their home like sunlight. The Carter-Chen partnership was thriving, reshaping skylines across 3 states. Sarah had built a life so full it barely had room for ghosts. But something in his message, a quiet desperation, told her he'd finally hit the bottom. When she found him sitting on their old bench, she almost didn't recognize him. The tailored suits and practiced smile were gone. His hair was unkempt, his face hollow, his eyes carrying the wreckage of every bad choice he'd made. "Sarah," he said, voice breaking, "I'm sorry. For everything. For Emma. For leaving. For being so blind. I threw away the only things that ever mattered. Can you ever forgive me?" She sat beside him, a careful distance between them. Her voice was calm, steady, the kind of calm that comes after surviving a storm. "I forgive you, Daniel," she said softly, "but not for you. For me. Because holding on to anger only hurts the one who carries it. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, or going back." His shoulders trembled. "I've lost everything," he whispered. "My job, my reputation. Victoria's gone. The Chens blacklisted me. No one will hire me. And Emma," his voice cracked, "I abandoned my daughter when she needed me most. What kind of father does that?" Sarah's eyes softened, but her tone stayed firm. "The kind who confused ambition for love," she said quietly. "The kind who saw his family as an obstacle instead of a gift. You didn't lose everything, Daniel. You traded it, and some trades can never be undone." He looked up, eyes red. "Can I see her?" "Please. I just want to see Emma." "You signed away your rights," she reminded him gently. "You made that choice. She's doing well now, happy, healing, and I won't let your guilt disturb that. Maybe one day, when she's older and she wants to know you, that will be her choice. But not now. Not like this." He nodded, silent tears streaming down his face. For the first time, she didn't see the man who had hurt her, only the man who had to live with what he'd done. That was punishment enough. "I hope you rebuild your life," Sarah said, rising. "And I hope you finally learn what real worth means, not power or titles, but honesty, showing up for the people who matter. But that lesson, you'll have to learn alone." She turned and walked away, the wind lifting her hair as she left the park, lighter than she'd felt in years. Behind her sat the ghost of a past she no longer owed anything to. 6 months later, Carter Engineering Solutions opened its 5th regional office. On a bright morning in New York, Emma, hair now thick and golden again, rang the ceremonial bell at the stock exchange beside her mother. Victoria stood with them, no longer the rival, but a friend, and Jennifer, the loyal constant through every heartbreak, stood proudly by Sarah's side. The cameras flashed, capturing a moment that was more than success. It was survival. 3 women, once connected by betrayal, now united by resilience. Sarah's story became legend, taught in business schools as a lesson in integrity and perseverance. But to her, it was simpler than that. It was proof that betrayal doesn't break you if you know your own worth. That power isn't in revenge, it's in rebuilding. And that the best kind of justice is a life so full, so beautiful, that the past can't reach it. She'd been discarded once, labeled as less. But in the end, she became everything they said she couldn't be, not to prove them wrong, but to prove herself right.